launch of the film on the state of Indian birds. So what happens when 30,000 bird watchers work together and provide 30 million data points? We get this. This is the state of state of India's birds report, and it's an amazing piece of work. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this evening's program. So the way this program is structured is first, I would like to invite the people who were behind creating this report, and we'll have a small chat, and then we will screen the film. And those of you who are interested in asking questions, you can post them in the YouTube link, and we would go through them and ask it to the people here on the panel, and they would probably answer those questions. So I'd like to invite the people who were part of this, in the creation of this, and I'd like, if they're already on screen, I have some questions for you guys. Ashwin is the data man. He's the one who crunched the numbers. Ashwin, what were the critical findings? What were the things that jumped and surprised you?
Hi, Sarah, and hi, everyone. One aspect of this report is that the observations were from all over the country, from many corners of the country. So it gave us a national perspective that might sometimes be lacking in our own areas. For example, Eurasian spoonbill. Eurasian spoonbill was found to have declined rapidly in the long term and is continuing to decline today. And that is something that caught us all which surprised all of us. Similarly, spotbill pelican is something that many people suspected was declining in the south, but the rates of decline again were a bit of a surprise. It's declining very rapidly, and this showed us that we need to probably take some action soon. But not all information was discouraging. There were some nice encouraging surprises, such as spot-breasted fantail having increased all over the country. And I think that's a matter of good news.
Okay, great. I think this film is going to really shock a lot of people in the way trends have come up, and I think once people see it, they might ask more questions. I'd like to move on to Janvi, the designer behind this report. She's done an amazing job of illustrating it and putting it together. And Janvi, tell us about how you got there. How did you imagine this design?
So thanks, Sarah, for that. The report is full of illustrations by Soumitra Deshmukh. And what was interesting about working on the design of this report was that the design team got to interact with all the other working groups right from the beginning, the data, threats, and policy teams. And we went through the content together to think of how best to visually represent every page and section in terms of layout, illustrations, and color even. It was interesting to work on a report that really wanted people to get to read about and understand the state of India's birds, while also making the process fun for the reader.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I hope that everybody gets a hand on it, and as much as they enjoy the data, I think they should enjoy the illustrations as well and the design.
Thanks.
I have a question for Ramesh. What are the major threats that Indian birds are facing now, and what is the situation?
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. There are, several complicated factors behind the decline Ashwin was mentioning. There are 8 major threats described in the State of Indian Birds book, which includes mainly these land use changes. Land use changes includes different factors like urbanization, monoculture, and also there are habitat degradation, especially the open habitat. This report also highlights, several open habitat species were declining rapidly, and also other, emerging threats like energy infrastructure. Especially, we consider this, wind farms and solar energy as a green energy, but there are, negative side of that too. Especially this power line. We all know that our Great Indian Bustard is facing a lot of issues with the power lines, and of course, this illegal hunting and trade is known, threat over the years. And also there are many threats like avian diseases. Recently in Sambar, we had a huge number of mortalities due to the avian disease. So these are the major threats we have given in the State of Indian Birds reports. Of course, there are other threats. In fact, there are more detailed studies are needed to understand how each threats affects the functional ecology of each habitat. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ramesh. A question for Neha. So I think one of the most important things about these kinds of reports is that you can use it to influence policy, right? What do you say about that?
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks to everybody who's here. So the SoIB 2 has a much stronger portion on policy as compared to the last SoIB report. And one of the most important things that we talk about is that more than 170 species are now of high conservation priority. So we need to have conservation and management plans for all these species. As Ashwin said, we haven't really had nationwide assessments of many of these birds. And the second thing that we talk about is the fact that we need to look beyond forests, because we've always associated forests with conservation in India, but the report has pointed out at least 3 habitats that need immediate attention: the coast, the rivers, and the open natural habitats. So we need to have systematic assessments of these areas. We need to find how we can protect these habitats better. And finally, it is important that research should be encouraged in our country, because you can't have conservation without research. So we do have a strong recommendation on asking for laws and policies that allow us to research these birds, especially in new areas or birds that are sadly declining today. Thanks.
Thanks, Neha. I have a question for Preeti. Preeti, I think one of the things the report talks about is systematic monitoring. Can you quickly explain what it is to the audience, and also what do you expect out of it? Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone who has joined. Systematic monitoring involves systematic, periodic, targeted monitoring of the taxa that we're interested in, and that is, in this case, birds. Like Ashwin said, that this is SoIB report is largely based on countrywide data, but very often local scale patterns and habitat level patterns, like Neha was saying, could be different from what the entire country is experiencing. So targeted efforts that are systematically done are really crucial and important to unravel local scale patterns, and also paired with monitoring of important environmental factors alongside these trends could really help us arrive at why these birds may be changing in population, may it be increase or may it be decrease, and so on and so forth. Very often making these causalities is quite complicated, but this is one step towards making some sense out of what's happening around us.
Okay. Thanks, Preeti. So the report is available as a hard copy like this, but it's also available online in a website as a PDF. So there's a massive and beautiful website that is a powerhouse of information. And Praveen, can you talk to us about it?
Thanks, Sarah, and good evening, everyone. Yeah, the website, this is stateofindiasbirds.in, is in fact our gateway to SoIB. That's the dynamic phase of it. So where more and more things will get added there. So for every species, there is an info sheet which is available, which is a lot of information. In fact, there's a species info sheet for every state, for every habitat, and also even for conservation areas like protected areas. Also, you can also download the report from the website. There are also the summaries, the multilingual summaries which are available. The press note is available. And the video which we'll have also will be linked there. And in fact, you can also launch the Mina tool from the website. So Mina is a data exploration tool, which is based on this massive data set of SoIB. And there you can actually explore a small region, say panchayat or a protected area. You can actually draw the boundaries of the region you're interested in, or you can upload a file. And then you get summaries, the number of species, the number of migratory species, list of threatened species, water bird congregation, priority species, hotspot, a wealth of information, which you can also download as a report and print it out. It's quite useful for the local conservation efforts, or if you're interested in a particular region, probably to present to a wildlife management plan, or to a panchayat for the biodiversity management committee, or just to protect that particular area by lobbying. So that set of information and wealth of it is what is available through this particular website, which you should all explore. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing site, and what it holds is like it's gold. So I hope that people explore it as well. I have one last question for Ashish. State of Indian Birds is not just about its report, right? There's a lot of outreach that happens. Can you explain what all you guys do and how people can get involved?
Thanks, Sarah, for this question. And yes, the SoIB is India's largest citizen science program, and we wanted it to reach to citizens and also to scientists. So 3 things we did different from the SoIB 2020. We identified 3 primary stakeholders, and then we devised our outreach program specifically for these stakeholders. So first was our common people, the e-birders who have put their data online. So we came up with this thing called Certificate of Appreciation. So there were around 50,000 e-birders who have put up their data. And that's what we used. So we reached out to each of these 50,000 people and we gave them a certificate of appreciation for the checklist contribution that they have made. Then secondly, we wanted to reach out to policymakers and the on-ground staff, the forest department staff and the NGOs which work at the local level. For that, we are coming up with state-specific data. So for example, IUCN data. There are several species which are doing very well globally, but then they're not doing so well nationally. So that's IUCN is not of much use to us. Same way for a state, say in South or in Northeast, the global data the national data might not be of that use. So we wanted to give them accurate state-wise or region-wise data. So that is something that we are looking at. And third is obviously to reach out to the scientific community. For that, we have research publications coming up soon.
Thanks a lot, Ashish. I think for those who are watching it, it seems like a rapid fire session where everybody's given a very short bit of time. I think once we watch the film, we can come back with a little more things to ask some questions. So I think without wasting too much time, let's get to viewing the film.
No matter where you are in India, you would most likely have seen a bird today. Wild birds are all around us. But how are they faring? Are they doing well? Or are they on the decline? In 2022, BirdLife International released its 5th edition of the State of the World's Birds report. The results paint a very grim picture. Currently, 49% of the world's bird species are in decline. 1 in every 8 species is threatened with extinction. And only 6% of species show signs of increase. North America alone has lost 2.9 billion individual birds since 1970. Europe has lost 600 million. World over, the figures are alarming. If the birds of the world are doing so badly, what is their status in India? India has over 1/10 of the world's bird species. Evaluating hundreds of bird species across a land area of over 3 million square kilometers is a huge challenge. Luckily, birdwatchers and enthusiasts in India have been contributing their observations to public database for several years. With access to over 30 million observations, a partnership of governmental and scientific institutions have created a status report on India's birds.
This report talks about the status of 942 Indian birds. All these observations were uploaded to eBird, which is an online platform. The report is largely based on the citizens' contributions, and it's impossible without the contribution of people power, and that's the beauty of citizen science.
The data obtained from citizen science efforts has been invaluable in assessing up-to-date abundance trends of Indian birds. These results are interesting, but also worrying. For example, our national bird, the Indian peafowl, is doing extremely well. It is one of the most rapidly increasing species in the country today. In the last 20 years, they have expanded up into the Himalayas and into the rainforests of the Western Ghats. It now occurs in every district in Kerala, a state where it was once extremely rare. Likewise, the Asian quail has nearly doubled over this time period and continues to show an increase. But other species are not faring as well. The Indian roller, a striking bird of open landscapes, is declining rapidly. Most duck species are also doing very badly.
So the state of India's birds is primarily determined through three indices. There's a long-term trend, which is a comparison of the trend today versus what it was before 2000. There's a current annual trend, which is a metric that looks at what the current status of the bird is. It may have declined or increased in the long term, but what is happening to it today? And this is an annual change over the last 7 years. Then the third metric is distribution range size. How much area in the country does it occupy? So the understanding here is that a species that is more restricted is of greater priority than a species that is more widespread.
Using these three indices, each species was classified into one of three categories of conservation priority for India. Each of these indices uses a set of parameters to determine status. For example, a species is considered as rapidly declining in the long term if it shows a decline of over 50%. Similarly, in the short term, if decline is over 2.7% annually, it is also considered as rapidly declining. A species is considered very restricted in its distribution if its range is less than 7,500 square kilometers, while its range is considered very large if it is more than 1 million square kilometers. This report also takes into account IUCN's categorizations when ascertaining the status of a species. Using all this, a priority list for conservation for the entire country has been created. Besides a countrywide list, the report also features a state and union territory-wise list of species that are of highest conservation priority. The report mentions the top 4 priority species for each of these areas. By scanning the QR code, one can access the full list for each area online. It also provides a wealth of details, including range maps. The report also features trends of species which have been combined based on shared ecology, habitat, diet, and behavior. When grouped based on habitat use, the trends seem to show that generalist species, those that can live in multiple habitat types, are doing very well. In contrast, however, habitat specialists are showing declines. Grassland species especially show the sharpest decline, which may reflect the fact that grasslands as a habitat are highly threatened. India's geographic placement makes it a critical stop for migratory birds. Many long-distance migrants spend winters in India, making it a crucial stop for sometimes entire populations of these species. Short-distance migrants, those species that migrate within India or exhibit altitudinal migration, are showing declines, but not as much as long-distance migrants. Keeping with the globally observed trends, birds that breed in the Arctic are showing severe declines. Data shows their numbers have gone down by close to 80% as a group. Grouping by diet also provides valuable insights. Birds that feed on fruit and nectar are doing well, maybe because these resources are readily available even in heavily modified rural and urban landscapes. On the other hand, raptors and vultures, birds that feed on vertebrates and carrion, have declined the most. Birds that feed on invertebrates, including insects, are declining rapidly. This observation is significant against the backdrop of plunging insect populations worldwide.
The second iteration of the State of India's Birds reports has a very strong section on policy recommendations and implications for conservation. We find that 178 birds in India are of high conservation concern, and we give general recommendations on how this can be dealt with as a society. We also have important conservation research and policy implications in almost every other section of the report.
The State of India's Birds report also discusses in detail some of the major threats and suggests potential mitigation measures.
So overall, I think that the SoIB report is a very useful reference and guide for researchers and scientists. I actually see this report as an invitation to ornithologists to take up important questions. Today, we definitely need better and clearer evidence collected over larger areas to guide our conservation policy.
The report is available in print and online and is accompanied by a website with additional details and features. For a deep dive into the data and to create customized reports and maps, one can also use the Mina desktop tool. Assessing the state of India's birds has been possible through the generosity of birdwatchers in sharing their observations and the collaboration of multiple organizations in analyzing and collating the report. This sort of public and collective participation and collaboration is vital if we are to conserve our precious birds and biodiversity.
So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this film as much as we enjoyed making it. I can see some questions that have come up. Maybe you can start answering them, and if there are more coming in, I'll keep you guys posted. I think the first question is about whether 5G network towers are having an effect and if they're pushing the local city birds to the outskirts. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Would Ramesh like to take it?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Actually, there are not much studies on this impact of mobile network on birds as such. Maybe there may be some effects, but so far not much studies has been conducted on this issue. And of course, there are organizations like SACON and BNHS has been asking the government to conduct this kind of studies. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Somebody, Fayaz has asked if he says there was some error in the data that he got from Mina. Praveen, can you help in that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a little hard to point out exactly what could be going on without knowing the error. There could be a couple of things which can happen. One, things which we know from the tool, right? There could be some issue related to corruption which can happen. Data errors, we are not sure of what kind of errors are there currently. But one thing to keep in mind is that the data set which is used for SoIB is not exactly same as eBird dataset. It stops at 31st May 2023. So if there are information coming on eBird right now after 31st May, those information would not be reflected in Mina. So this is something which other people have noticed and something to be kept in mind. But this is a big tool where you can draw boundaries anywhere in the country. I would request the people who are finding the errors to write to the email ID which is mentioned in the tool, which is mina@stateofindiasbirds.in. That's the best way in which we could actually solve these errors which you see. And you are from that region, you would know these errors much more than us. Please notify us. We'll take it up and make sure that this gets fixed in the next version.
Thanks, Praveen. There's another Mina related question. There's another Praveen who says that Mina, unless it's you, Mina, the bird lists are only in scientific names.
Bit surprised because the entire bird list is having both English names and scientific name. But if you actually downloaded that report, please forward it to us in that same email ID, mina@stateofindiasbirds.in, and we will look into it. But by design and by all the reports which we have downloaded, both English name and scientific names are there. You'll have English name first, followed by the scientific name just below it. That's the format of Mina. But feel free to send us a PDF file. We will look into it.
So there's another question which says, any chance the common names will be shown in Mina app? So, okay, it's probably okay, same person. Okay, there's one question. I'm just trying to go through it, guys. Just give me a second. There's a question from Surabhi which says, do agricultural fields serve this purpose of grasslands to give the birds the kind of habitat? Can anybody answer that?
Ashwin, you want to take it?
Sure. So agricultural fields don't quite serve the same purpose as grasslands. There are some birds that specialize on grassland habitats specifically. But this is not true for all birds. So this time there's a separate analysis that's been done, which is available on the SoIB website, where the country has been areas with some amount of grassland and some amount of croplands, etc. There have been separate analysis done in these areas, and these the results of these analyses are also available on the website. So, for example, you can see whether Indian cocer, for example, is a bird that we think is associated with grasslands. Is it doing better in areas that have a lot of grassland, or is it doing better in areas that have a lot of cropland or agriculture, or is it doing better in the country as a whole? So this changes between species, and it's something that you can look at species of interest and get any learnings that you'd like from the website.
Thanks, Ashwin. There's a very interesting question from Nishant. Any locations that you found difficulty in finding enough data on eBird? Who can take that? Praveen or Ashwin?
Either of us, I can add, and Ashwin, you can chip it in. Yes, there are areas where we actually have very little data. A couple of areas where we would have liked to have much more data. One is the entire Northeast India, and the second area where we would actually have like more data is the Gangetic Plains from the Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, almost till West Bengal. These are two areas which, at least, it would have been nice to have a lot more data in comparison with the other parts. But there are, of course, dark holes everywhere in the country. But these are the two large areas which I would like to highlight. Ashwin, do you remember any other area we want to highlight?
No, these are largely the areas, but what I'd like to add is that there are birdwatching communities now springing up all over the country, and birdwatching is becoming such a popular hobby in every corner of the country, really. So by the next report, I would expect that there is much better coverage, and there are many people watching birds in the areas that we discussed now.
Okay, there's one question for you, Ashwin. I think it's exactly what you would like to explain. How was all the eBird data standardized in order to be compatible? 30,000 birders would have put forward an overwhelming amount of data.
So that's such a good question. When people watch birds, they do it out of joy. It's actually primarily a fun activity, and then the next step is really the data. So when people watch birds, some people watch birds for 5 minutes, some for 10 minutes, some checklists are for 1 hour. So there are a lot of differences in how all of us watch birds. So actually, to make all of this comparable and to get some sense out of it, you need some advanced statistics that allows us to standardize all of this to some consistent effort. So if anybody is interested in learning more about the statistics, there'll also be a scientific publication that comes out. But you can also look at the report where in the method section, some of this is detailed of how some of these differences across the country and between people's own birdwatching behavior, how some of these are accounted for to make sense out of the whole data set.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going through it. Give me a second, guys. So one of the questions from Vishnu, it's a very broad question. What are the measures that we bird groups can plan for the open habitat high priority species? Essentially, what can people do about it? Can people do anything about it?
I think we should start with having more lists. So, for example, there was a discussion as to many of the common birds that we see are declining. So people are surprised to note that decline. For example, that of the Indian roller, or the great grey shrike, forest wagtail, etc. So it would be great if people started with giving us more data, because we can't, have a better report next time without good data. And I'd also like to say that, sometimes people feel that maybe I don't need to make another bird list because I was here yesterday. But I think people should give as many lists as they can, even if, there's a gap of just one day from the last list to the next one. And I think generally to advocate for ecosystems and habitats beyond forests is also a good one. And birds are such a great indicator for all of biodiversity, right? So we can actually use birds as a barometer to see how biodiversity generally is faring. So let's look beyond forests and give more data. That would be my request.
Okay, I think there are a few questions coming in. We might be running out of time, but I have one thing that I'd like to sound off on behalf of the audience. See, very often we go out and we see birds. Like Neha was talking about how people message us saying that they keep seeing rollers. Why are they? Why do you say they are going down? I think it's important for people to understand that individual sightings and larger patterns can be very different. How do you put it across to people? I mean, it's just an open discussion. It's sometimes the data is non-intuitive in certain areas, but in some cases you can do it. But time has this way of, what can I say, blinding us about trends. And data like this, only hard data can actually show these kinds of trends. I mean, this is just a philosophical thing. Does anybody have anything to say about this? The difference between us seeing things and thinking it's all well versus the data showing that no, it's not true. Things are going down or going up or whatever.
I think to give one part of this answer, to get a sense for how common birds are doing, I think is really difficult from our own observations, because common birds, we continue to see them. It's not that they've disappeared. We can say, for example, that vultures have disappeared or certain raptors have disappeared. And there we can say that there is very clearly a decline. But about common myna or house crow or large-billed crow, do we continue to see them? We used to see them in the past, but do we see them a little less than what we used to? Do we see them a little more than what we used to? This is why data is really useful in giving us some early warning signal for our common birds, because the common birds are the ones that are really a part of our lives now and something that we should strive to protect, just like Indian roller. We continue to see Indian roller, luckily. We used to see them in the past, but the data says that we see them much less today than we used to in the past. And I think that is an important insight that can help us prioritize that species now for conservation.
Okay, I think we have to, what we see is something that we have to take with a pinch of salt and look at larger trends. And that's what this amazing report is all about. And that's what fascinated me when I first got to hear about it. And I'm so glad I got this opportunity to make this film, because by doing it, I really understood what was going behind it, the science behind it, and the fact that the trends for once we have for this country, right? I mean, no other group has this kind of data set and the ability to look at patterns over a long period of time. I think we've run out of time for this session, so I think we should wrap it. If people have comments, please put them on the channel, and let's see if some of the experts here can answer them later on in the comments itself. So thank you guys and girls for joining. It was amazing working with you all doing this film. And I hope that this report goes to where it really is intended to help people do better conservation and to probably frame better policies, and also just people who I think I need to put this point that all of us, including me, go for bird watching trips, but we never bother to actually systematically collect data. I think this has really inspired me to actually, next time I go, I will definitely keep my list. So for good or for better, at some point of time, I hope it will be one little data point in these amazing data points that you guys have. So anyway, thanks a lot, and hope to see you all soon.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks everyone, and bye.
Yeah.
Bye.